Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our May webinar hosted by the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. We are so glad that you are with us today for this discussion centered around Section 5 of our new Trustee Handbook. This is a virtual resource for community college board members that was created by your Community College Association of Texas Trustees as part of our strategic plan called Focus Forward. The link to the workbook has been sent to your college liaisons and sent to our members. And so we're very happy that we have this handbook as a resource as part of orientation training for our local members. Just a second, I'm going to pull something up. There we go. So the handbook is available on our website, and it was developed in partnership with many nationally recognized leaders, and it was compiled and edited by Dr. Martha Ellis. So we are very happy that we can use this premier source of trustee development and trustee training as part of this webinar series. So I want to talk a little bit about today's webinar and what we're going to be covering in Section 5. Don't worry, the other sections are equally important and have a lot of great background, but we thought we would start with specifics around an overview of Texas law and overview of what is unique about the state of Texas in this handbook. Dr. Martha Ellis was the one who actually wrote this section of the handbook. And we are fortunate that someone with her expertise was our partner in creating this handbook. Dr. Ellis has recently been named as the interim president and CEO of the Texas Association of Community Colleges, but she is a very long time and well-known leader in community college sector in Texas. She is a former president of Lee College, and now serves as a consultant with Mellis LLC. It's a consulting firm that really capitalizes on her deep expertise and knowledge and her leadership across the community college sector. She brings a wealth of information on governance, advocacy, finance, and accreditation, and has been a part of higher education as I said, in Texas for a number of years. She is currently serving as a Texas Pathways coach for the Texas Success Center and Achieving the Dream leadership coach and professor of practice at the University of Texas in Austin. Previously, she was managing director for the Charles A. Dana Center at the University of Texas in Austin. And before joining the Dana Center, she was Associate Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs for the University of Texas System. She has 35 years experience in community college leadership in Texas and New Mexico, including 2 college presidencies. She served as provost, chief information officer, and undergraduate dean, and a faculty member. She has chaired the appeals committee for the Commission on Colleges as part of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, has served on the board of both the American Association of Community Colleges and on the executive committee of the Texas Association of Community Colleges. She is a volunteer in a number of chamber, economic development, hospital boards, and again, has worked tremendously to lead community colleges forward in the state of Texas and across the nation. Dr. Ellis, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Carol. It's wonderful to be with you and the trustees today. Always a pleasure. As Carol said, today it's going to be a high-level overview of Texas, not so much about board roles or governance, but about the state of Texas and about our community colleges. As you know, the goal of community colleges is that all residents will be within commuting distance of one of our institutions. And what we want to do today is look at what does that really mean, both for the students, for the communities we serve, as well as for the entire state of Texas. I'm going to be giving a high-level overview, as I said. So if you're interested in more information about your own particular college on some of these topics, you can definitely go to the TAC website. Also, if you want to know more information about some of the topics, I would encourage you to participate in the CATT webinars and also in the CATT annual conference that's coming up in June in Houston. Always valuable professional development that goes into more depth about some of these topics that we'll be talking about today, as well as governance issues surrounding these topics. So with that, let me kick it off to look at community colleges. They are in the Texas Education Code. Let me just stop for a minute. If you have questions, please put them in the chat as we go through, and Nicole will interrupt me. She's keeping an eye on the chat, and so would love to answer questions as we go, because we're going through a variety of topics, and it'll make more sense to answer questions around that particular topic as you have them. So please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A section. So Texas Education Code set up why we have community colleges, and they, as you know, two-year institutions. So they're stepping stones to the baccalaureate degree for sure. Also workforce development, and that includes both credit, but also continuing education workforce development, remedial and compensatory education, because consistent with our open door admissions policy. Also in the code, you'll notice that it has programs for counseling and guidance. So the student support services are also part of the education code. So that is the foundation upon which all of our community colleges are built. Of course, you know, the reason why we do this is because of the students we serve. And that is why we do what we do each and every day. So I want to start with looking a little bit about what do we mean by the students in community colleges, and look at some overall high-level data. First of all, 43% of all students enrolled in any type of higher education in the state of Texas, anything beyond high school, are enrolled in community colleges. 46% are at public universities. That includes all of their undergraduate as well as graduate. So you will notice that if you look at the freshman and sophomore level, 68% of all of the freshmen and sophomores in Texas are enrolled in our colleges and Texas community colleges. And 93% of all career and technical education degrees and certificates are earned at our community colleges. And 90% of all dual credit enrollments are at the community colleges. So you can see the tremendous impact that community colleges have on the state of Texas in preparing people for whatever their career choice is, whether it's a certificate or whether it's a baccalaureate degree. They are starting at our community colleges, maybe in high school and dual credit, maybe right out of high school, or maybe as an adult coming back after years of being away from education. You'll see on this chart the diversity of our student population with race and ethnicity, also economically disadvantaged, and age. The populations that we serve that we were just talking about. Community colleges have done some amazing work in the last couple of years, particularly around the guided pathways work and the reform work that has gone on to transform institutions and really meet the needs of our students. And you can see this in the results of the numbers of certificates and degrees that have been awarded and the increase from 2001 to 2021. So tremendous growth, both in the academic transfer credentials as well as the workforce development degree programs. One point I want to make sure and talk about, that's something I think we overlook many times, is that when you look at baccalaureate degree completers in the state of Texas, 70% of all students who earn a bachelor's degree in the state of Texas have some community college hours on their transcript. We are the top state in the nation for the amount of impact community colleges have on baccalaureate degree completers. So something that really speaks highly of the great work that's going on around the academic transfer programs, as well as, of course, the 93% of all technical education courses and programs are completed by our community college students. Also, we're affordable and students graduate with less debt, and are very accessible as far as debt of first-year graduates. So when you look on the financial side for students, it is incredibly affordable for most students. That being said, I think we don't want to forget about the students that are walking through our doors, and many of them are faced with basic needs insecurities. Finances are really a critical aspect of their being able to complete a college degree. I know many of your institutions have set up emergency loan programs to help out students because, as you see here, 50% of students have run out of money 3 or more times in the past year. This was fall of 2020. So that emergency aid, whether it's $50 or $200, may be what keeps them in school while they get through that gap of running out of money. I know many of your colleges have food banks, are helping with housing insecurity, transportation needs. All of these are critical for students to be successful because we are meeting the needs of students that have not seen college as a viable opportunity for them. And our community colleges are providing that doorway to a better life and economic upward mobility. So let's get into the community colleges themselves. So here are a few details about it. As you know, there are 50 community college districts in the state of Texas. They're all independent from one another. They're not through a system office. There are over 90 campuses, so 50 districts, and many districts have multiple campuses. There's also, in addition to campuses, centers. So many colleges have a variety of centers as well as campuses within their district. And some colleges have one main campus, and that is basically the campus that they have. The enrollment ranges, and this is, let me state, only credit hours, so semester credit hours only. This does not include continuing education, adult education and literacy, or any of the other programs. It does include dual credit students that are enrolled in credit programs. So when you look at the range of enrollment of students, that's head count of 1,400 to 72,000 students enrolled. This is within each of the college districts. So one district may have 2,000 and another district may have 68,000. So a wide variety of enrollment ranges within our community colleges and the communities that they serve. All of our colleges, all of Texas community colleges are accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges of Schools Commission on Colleges. This is a regional educational accreditor, and it's recognized by the U.S. Department of Ed. And it's really important to have this accreditation in order to have students be eligible for financial aid, and also so that students can transfer their credits from one institution to another. And the mission or the goal of this organization is to assure the educational quality and to improve effectiveness of its member organizations. So every 10 years, your college goes through a reaffirmation process with them, and that ensures and really validates the great work that is going on your campus. There's a set of principles within this, and I will tell you that if you look in the principles of accreditation, section 4 actually talks about the requirements for governing boards. So SAC sees the importance and recognizes the value that you provide by providing some different ways for your college to recognize the work you're doing. Open door admissions, of course, we've talked about. Students can come to the college without having to be in the top 10% or take certain tests in order to get admissions into the colleges. We do have testing many times to help students ascertain where they are best placed in classes, but that does not preclude them from enrolling in a community college. When you look at tuition, we talked about how affordable community colleges are in the state of Texas. Each community college sets their own rate for in-district, out-of-district, and out-of-state tuition and fees. What you see here is a range of the tuition that's charged by different colleges within the state of Texas for their in-district tuition. Community colleges in Texas are on a semester system. Within that semester system, The length of courses can be the 16-week, which is a semester, or they can be 8-week classes or 6-week classes or 4-week classes, any combination thereof. And this really allows a great deal of flexibility for our students so that they can take many times more classes in a semester than they thought they could, or allows them to work around their work schedule or other things, because the classes within that 16 weeks may be a variety of different time frames. You can see more data about the associate degrees, length of courses, and other measures in the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board Almanac. One thing to note is that all 2-year degrees in the state of Texas are capped at 60 semester credit hours. So that is the limit of the number of credit hours that can be offered, the number of courses within that. And of course, if you're looking at the variety within our community colleges, you have adult education of literacy, continuing education, as well as the things we normally think about of certificates, associate degrees, and a limited number of baccalaureate degrees as well. So a wide variety to meet the needs of our community and serve our students. As I mentioned, there's 50 community colleges across the state of Texas. At TAC, we really like to divide them by regions because we know that the state is so large, we need a variety of understanding because our regions are very different from one another. So here you'll see the 6 regions as we have them divided up, and the colleges that fall underneath each of those regions. So your regional compadres in the community college world. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board also sets up comparing community colleges to one another by size. So this will be by enrollment. They have very large, medium, and small. The reason why I mentioned this is why we talk about regional working together. But one of the things that also is important when you're benchmarking your college with other colleges is you may want to look not only at your region, but also at the size. So if you're a medium college, looking at other medium colleges in the state of Texas may be beneficial in seeing and comparing how well you're doing, and also getting ideas of how they're addressing challenges or issues. And that information can be found on the coordinating board website if you want to see who your peers are regarding size. Once again, we have 50 independent districts governed by you, the elected boards of trustees, and in Texas, community college boards are elected. Occasionally you appoint a board member if you have one that resigns or has to leave for a reason. But again, they would have to be elected for upcoming terms. The general size is 5, 7, 9, but you can go up to 14 legislatively. You can't go more than 14 members. There are 6-year rotating terms, so that you always have consistency across the board and not everyone is being up for election at the same time. It's interesting when you look at the state of Texas, some of the elections are totally at large. Some of them have single member districts and some of them have a combination of the two. So again, you see the differences by the needs of the community that the community colleges are serving. Operationally, as most of you know, a lot of boards run with committees, finance committee, audit committee, pathways committee, student success committee. Those are some examples. Some operate more as a full board and only have maybe an audit committee. So it really depends on what you need and what works best for your institution. Always have executive session opportunities for legal issues, personnel issues, real estate issues, but basically we are an open meeting state. So we do have an open meetings law, and all of the board meetings are open meetings as required by law, and posting of your minutes as required by law. And you have to have a training within 90 days of entering your term on open meetings law, because it is critical for the state of Texas that your deliberations are done transparently in the open meetings. Of course, the CEO reports to the board, and one of the greatest opportunities, we say, and one of the greatest responsibilities is the hiring and growth and development that the board provides to the chief executive officer, whether that's a president or a chancellor. So Nicole, let me stop for a minute and see if we have any questions.
No one's added any questions in the chat yet, so I think we're okay to keep going.
Okay.
We do have both the chat and Q&A function that I'm monitoring if anyone wants to add any
Perfect.
comments
Well,
or questions.
Thanks. Well, we may have such an educated group on this call. They may have been able to provide this, but it's great to be with you all. So I'm just going to keep moving along then, and please feel free at any time to drop in questions. I mentioned the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board several times, and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is the state's higher education agency. As I said, we don't have a system office, so this particular organization provides coordination. That's what it's called, the Coordinating Board. And they coordinate all of the Texas higher education systems, and that includes community colleges and universities, all of the public institutions, and all of the governing boards, to the end that the state of Texas may achieve excellence in college education. And it wants to have efficient and effective utilization and concentration of resources. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. And they really want to eliminate duplication of program offerings and also have consistency across program offerings. So when you see the academic course guide manual and the workforce education course manual, that's the list of courses, and there's learning outcomes, and these are the ones that are approved and can be offered by any community college. And if it's in the ACGM, then it needs to transfer to a university, because that is the standard freshman and sophomore level courses for transfer and academic programs. So that really those are two good examples of when they talk about avoiding costly duplication, but also effective and efficient work around the courses offered across the state of Texas. You as an institution decide which courses you're going to offer, which programs you're going to offer, but the courses that you provide are in this manual. If you have a new course that's not in there, you can actually apply to the coordinating board to get approval for it to be added. And this is really important as we see new programs that we didn't even know would exist 10 years ago are now part of what industry needs for the future, or what is needed in various fields for transfer. So it does give that opportunity for including new courses and new programs as is needed by the state of Texas, your region, and your local community. The coordinating board also does a lot of data collection. They have a very rich data site. If you're interested in more information, you can look at both the almanac, or you can go in and see data in their accountability measures. It will have your college, and you can really scroll through, or you can also do some reports or have your president do some of those for you. I think most presidents are providing you with that information, but if you're interested in just exploring, you can definitely go to the coordinating board website. And of course, the coordinating board is also responsible for rulemaking for legislation. So anytime legislation passes that impacts any area of higher education, it falls on the coordinating board's shoulders to develop the rulemaking, to put it out there for feedback. And then the rulemaking is how that particular law is implemented by our colleges and universities across the state of Texas. Oh, let me say one thing. I didn't mention the 60 by 30 Texas and building a talent strong Texas, the first bullet. Both of those, most of you are familiar with the 60 by 30 Texas, which was the strategic plan for the state of Texas for post-secondary education. That has been updated in the last year to building a talent strong Texas. So the foundation of 60 by 30 is still there, but the building a talent strong Texas has expanded and increased that work and updated the strategic plan. So it's not done away with 60 by 30. It has just expanded and built upon that very ambitious goal that we're trying to achieve in the state of Texas of 60% having college credential by 2030. Texas legislature meets every other year. You hear about the education code. The whole reason we have the education code is because Texas legislature has passed that in years past. And they meet every other year, January through May. We have one coming up this January. with, of course, elections in November. Most of the information I'm talking about from here on will be from the last legislative session, which was the 87th legislator. And what I want to talk about now is about the Texas Association of Community Colleges and the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. These two organizations are the voice for community colleges in the state, and the advocacy arm for, I would say, for the community colleges. Individual colleges, of course, do advocacy, but what TAC and CAT provide is a state level, one voice for the issues that all of the community colleges and trustees agree are important for the upcoming legislative session. I think one of the things that is really critical right now is the Texas Community College Finance Commission, where the passed last legislative session to review how community colleges are financed. And we have a commission that is meeting now to help guide the recommendations that will go to the legislature in the next session. And Carol Scott is on that commission, which is wonderful to have our CAT representative there, as well as 4 community college presidents, a community college faculty member, and then some elected officials. The group is chaired by Woody Hunt, a business leader in the state of Texas and friend to community colleges and all of higher education, as well as the Commissioner of Higher Education, Commissioner Keller from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And so TAC and CAT are working closely with that commission to help plan for the future funding model for community colleges. And you will be hearing more about that as we continue to develop and learn from the work groups and the commission as to what should be the best model for community colleges, and look forward to your engagement in that advocacy work as that happens, as that comes, as we know more about what that will be going forward. Lastly, how the funding model is set up on a biennium, and that's because the legislative cycle is every other year. And therefore we get a biennium funding model. So what I want to move into now is the funding model of community colleges in the state of Texas as it currently stands. We will see what changes take place based on the commission, but this is how it currently stands. So the financial model in theory, when community colleges were first established in Texas, the goal was that it was a partnership between local taxing districts and the state of Texas and the student. So you had basically three prongs: local taxes, state reimbursement, and tuition. There is a slight part of that pie that is federal dollars, and that is primarily federal financial aid, but a very small portion of the financial model of how our community colleges operate. So the theory was that basically it was a third, a third, and a third. Okay. I want to show you what it looks like right now. So when you look at this very crazy busy chart, you have all of the community colleges across the bottom. And then on the side, you will see on the side, you will see the percentage of funding. If it was a third, 33% would come from state, 33%, which is the green at the bottom. 33% would come from tuition and fees, which is the brown in the middle. And then the last 34 or so percent would come from local taxes, which is the blue at the top. You can see the diversity of our colleges. Some are highly dependent upon state appropriations, and some have an incredible local tax base, which supports their college, and almost nothing from the state. And some have large tuition revenue with little from the state and almost no property taxes or local taxes. So it is currently set up of a model that is very different depending upon the college where you are. As you know, we have property taxes are only based on what is going on in district. So let me show you what that means. If you look at the map on the right-hand side with very few colored in boxes, those are the taxing districts of our community colleges. So when you see back on this chart, all the blue that's at the top, that's coming from the colored in boxes on the right, only from a few. So this is the territories within the boundaries of a taxing district of a community college. You will see a few that are sort of a gray, if you can see my scroll here, but if a few gray, that's maintenance tax, and those are branch campuses with a very smaller amount of revenue than a property tax, but those are very few in the state of Texas. If you look on the left-hand side, that includes the service areas. So service areas are the territory outside the boundaries of your taxing district in which the community college provides services. So you can see how small the taxing district is and how large the service area is for the community colleges, for most of the community colleges in the state of Texas. So what that means is you have in-district tuition for those that serve in your taxing district, because of course you have taxpayers helping to support your local community college. If you're in a service area, you don't have the property taxes, and therefore you charge more tuition because you don't have the money coming from that particular area to help support the services that are provided to those students who live outside of the property tax or the taxing district. So that's your out of district tuition. And then of course, out of state is anything outside the state of Texas. So this impacts your tuition and fee structure, and you as a board decide how much that will be. And that includes not only courses on your campus, but courses at other centers, dual credit courses, every type of course that you offer on the credit side of the house for your community colleges. Now, to state reimbursement. So we've looked at property taxes as far as how that's divided up. We've looked at why tuition and fees. The bottom line, the green, is the part from the state appropriations. So this was from the 87th legislature. So there are primary areas for the state funding. And the thing that is difficult for you as governing bodies, as well as for the CEO and your college, is that this changes every legislative session. So there is not a predictability in what you're going to get in these categories, what kind of dollar is allocated. Also, the dollars come, if you look at the budget for the state of Texas, it is a lump sum community college budget for all 50 colleges. And then it gets divided up depending upon the formulas that are created by the legislature that session as to how much money each community college gets. So let me give you an example. This is the amount of money from the last legislative session, the 87th. And in actuality, if you looked at the bottom line between the 86th and the 87th, community colleges actually got $5.2 million increase from one biennium to the other. But at the same time, 24 of our community colleges actually saw a decrease in funding from this last legislative session because of the way that the contact hour formula and the success points were decided upon in this legislative session. Contact hour funding is, as it says, it's the number of contact hours that your students are enrolled in. And it's basically information that is gathered strictly on enrollment. Success points are for achievement by students. And so you get so many points for college readiness in reading, writing, and math. So that's your college preparatory piece. Completion of first level course in reading, writing, and math. So you complete that. Then completion of 15 semester credit hours and a completion of 30 semester credit hours. And you get points for that, for each one of those. And then you get points for credential attainment, and that's degrees and certificates that have been awarded. And then you get some extra points for degrees and certificates that are awarded in critical fields. Education code tells us what those critical fields are. They're things like engineering, computer science, math, physical science, nursing, teacher certification, allied health. But each General Appropriations Act designates which programs will be determined as critical fields for that biennium. So once again, at the last one, it was industrial robotics, physical science, heavy and industrial equipment maintenance technologies. So again, that is something that tends to change based on the needs of the state of Texas, and they are identified as the critical fields for that particular biennium, which is then how you get the points for that particular degree or certificate awarded in a critical field. You also, of course, get success points for your students who transfer to a university, and it's that they transfer anytime after completing 15 semester credit hours at a community college. So those success points, and this last biennium, we actually got additional allocation on success points, but they took the money to put to success points from the contact hour funding. So it was basically a shifting of funds, which shows a shifting of some of the priorities that the legislature had. And then there's other things like core operations, some need-based, which went to 11 institutions. Those of colleges that have bachelor's of applied technology programs get funding for that, and then a variety of non-formula items, as well as some funding for the partial funding that the state does for insurance and other things. So that is the state reimbursement formula funding. It is an allocation model of funding as opposed to a true funding model, and again, one lump sum that is then divided up between the 50 community colleges based on the formula that is established by the legislature in conjunction with the co-board and a formula advisory committee made up of college presidents. So I want to end with just this last particular point. In 2020, the comptroller's office of the state basically did an economic impact study. They requested financial data from the 50 community colleges, and they wanted to see the economic impact. So their analysis actually predated the COVID-19 crisis and the economic impacts that followed. But what they found is in all, the 50 Texas districts reported revenues of $5.3 billion in 2018, which produced $4.5 billion in additional economic activity by business and households for a total output of 9.8 million. And so you can see that in the work. The other piece that I think was really critical is nearly 78,000 jobs, and you see that 77,738, supported by the college's spending. And under normal economic conditions, every dollar spent by community colleges produced an additional 86 cents of economic activity, while every dollar spent on compensation produced an additional 38 cents. So well over about $1.24 for every dollar spent was added to the economy. Probably something that is most interesting is what you see at the bottom on that graph. Workers, the increase in wages for those students who get an associate degree or certificate have stable jobs, and they average $8,393 more annually. And this increase on wages alone is 3.2 million for workers, and it adds an additional 27.2 billion in direct compensation to the state economy each year. That's 27.2 billion to the state economy, and that's more than 5 times what the total spending on community colleges. So the comptroller basically concluded that indeed community colleges was an incredible return on investment for the state of Texas, not only for individual lives, but for the public good of the state of Texas. And it was a well-deserved investment for local communities, individuals, and the state of Texas to promote economic and upward mobility for all involved. So with that, Nicole, happy to answer any questions or any comments people have or things they would like to add.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this overview. I'm seeing comments in the chat that your, very clear information has been provided, so no questions are popping up. So that's always good feedback. I am curious how the results of this study that you're showing from the comptroller's office were received when it was published, and if this is something that has been widely distributed to our legislators.
Yes, it was the last, it has been in the session, and we will continue to use it. I think many community colleges individually have done economic impact, and we have that on our TAC website, so you can see the different colleges. But what was wonderful about this was it was, basically a third party looking at the entire state of Texas. So you have your own individual college economic impact that you have at your institution, but you can also have this one from the state of Texas to show the impact not only on your region, but also on the state. We will continue to use that, and hopefully the comptroller will update it again in the near future as we continue to see the incredible impact community colleges have on the state, and the return on investment of every dollar spent at community colleges has an incredible return on investment.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. We do have a question. If you could talk about what other states' governance structures are like and how what you've just described in Texas is unique.
Right. So many other states have a system office. Virginia, for example, they have Virginia Community College System. So they have one board for the entire system, and then each of their colleges has an advisory board, but they do not have elected boards for each of their community colleges. So that's their number of states have that particular process. And so that's very different than Texas. The others that are similar to Texas have, like Florida is a good example, that they have the independent, but they also have different funding models. And we are exploring those different funding models in the state of Texas as we're looking at the commission's work. For Finance Commission. I'll give you an example of Ohio and Tennessee are 100% performance-based funding. And so they get no funding based strictly on enrollment. Their money is based on completion, much like our success points, if you just took that and did 100%. I was actually having a conversation this morning with New Jersey, and they went through some revisions in their funding model a few years ago, and are moving to some performance-based funding, but they've also instituted some startup funding for new programs as part of their model now. And much like the universities in the state of Texas have some startup funds. So when they have new programs, they can apply to get startup funds. So New Jersey is implementing that with their community colleges for some particularly workforce programs. So there's some different models. The other thing that I think we're starting to see in other states, as well as we're hoping in Texas, is that micro-credentials and continuing education are recognized. And if we get short-term Pell funding, so students can access financial aid for those short courses, we're hoping also to get recognized that with the financial remuneration from the state or reimbursement for continuing education courses and micro-credentials in the future. And we're seeing some states starting to do that as well.
Thank you. Another question we got in is about the student success points. Since the allocation you described varies from one biennium to the next, what goal are we shooting for in this next legislative session?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I think we look for the student success points as a way to validate the good work, and they vary of how much you fund each point and vary which points. I would say I'm hoping that with the Finance Commission, we might have an entirely different approach to this, as opposed to the current approach. So the goal would be to work with the Finance Commission and really develop a long-term strategy for fully funding community colleges. And that would be whatever process they come up with, but that would recognize enrollment growth, it would recognize completion growth, it would recognize program growth, and it would truly support all elements of the community college to meet the mission that we started with at the very beginning of this program. And so a success point model may be quite different based on what the commission comes up with than what it is today, and hopefully would have a more sustainable, predictable future than it currently is. And that will be on the next legislative session. So, we may have a totally different model, and we're not talking about any of this a year from now. So,
right, there's a lot of question marks at this
For
point
sure.
in deliberations of the Finance Commission.
Right.
So we'll look forward to some more clarity towards the end of the year.
For sure.
I think another question for you, Dr. Ellis, is around accreditation.
Yes.
So you mentioned the Southern Association of Schools and Colleges, Commission on Colleges.
Right.
Can you speak about other accreditors who may be more programmatic specific, or the NACEP accrediting for dual enrollment programs? And,
Right.
and what does that mean for a college too?
Sure. So all colleges that have allied health programs, nursing programs, know they each have their own accrediting. So respiratory therapy has their own accrediting body, and nursing has their own accrediting body. Dental hygiene has its own accrediting body. Each one of those accreditation processes are critical for your college in order to be able to have your program recognized. So that you have to have it accredited by the Nursing Association, so that your students know that they have quality program, and they know they can get a job at the end, and they know that they can pass the NCLEX exam if they do everything they should do as a student. And so there are different accrediting bodies for different disciplines within the community college. When you're looking at NACEP, that is for dual credit programs. And there's accreditation, but the difference between NACEP and a nursing is, for the nursing accreditation, you have to have that to offer the nursing program. For NACEP and others, that's recognizing outstanding work that you're doing in a particular part of the college. And we're seeing more and more of those accrediting approaches a little differently. So for example, if you're wanting to do cloud computing with AWS, you have to have, your faculty have to have certain certifications in order to teach the AWS, and they can take the certification exams. So it comes in a variety of forms, and it's a complex system for your chief academic officer to understand all of that. But it is critical, and there are a variety of accrediting bodies that work with your institutions to provide principles and guidelines so that your courses and programs are valued and are quality and get recognized as such.
Thank you. I don't see any lingering questions in the chat. So I want to just thank you again for spending your time with us and providing this overview. there's a lot of information in the handbook. In addition to what Martha's covered here, there, the first 4 sections really dive into the nuances of trusteeship and other aspects of the role. So before we close, I think Carol's going to come back and say a few words.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you so much, Dr. Ellis. We certainly appreciate your sharing your expertise with us today. Wanted to just give a little commercial about the use of the handbook. We made it digital so that those of you who are chairs of your board or in leadership positions with your local boards, please use it as you onboard and orient new members of your Board of Regents or Board of Trustees, and share it with your colleagues so that it can be used at your pleasure. We are going to provide some ongoing training for newly elected regents and trustees. And this handbook is our textbook for that, is our curriculum at which we'll base in-person training events. We will use it for future webinars and regional leadership seminars, etc. So you'll see content from this handbook used on a regular basis. Which leads me to our annual conference. It's coming up in June 16th through the 18th in Houston. We do have, while formal registration or early registration has closed, we do have an opportunity for those who might still want to register to please contact Nicole and the staff at TACC. She's going to drop that email address into the chat box. Sandra Guardo is helping with the registration. And so if you did not have a chance to register yet and you would still like to attend our annual conference, please do so. A couple of features of that annual conference are going to include a new trustee luncheon. So if any of you have trustees who've recently been elected either in November or in May, please encourage them to attend that new trustees luncheon for continuing opportunity for orientation and training for those new board members. We're going to have sessions on student success. We're going to have sessions on governance. The whole conference is around community college governance and strategic planning. And we're going to hear more information on a variety of topics. And one of the always favorite topics is our legislative update, to hear specifically from TAC and CATT legislative staff, including our new director, senior director for legislative affairs, Jacob Cottingham. And we'll also hear from former Senator Florence Shapiro and her staff. Senator Shapiro serves as our external lobbyist for the Texas Association of Community Colleges and the Community College Association of Texas Trustees. So a lot of content at this conference. It's going to start at noon on Thursday the 16th, and we will conclude before lunch on Saturday the 18th. And we look forward to seeing you all in Houston. Thank you very much for attending today. And Nicole is going to have a couple of wrap-up comments.
Oh, I was just going to say thanks again. And we look forward to seeing you next month in Houston. Bye-bye.